Albert Wesker was born in 1960 to a pair of parents who had superior intellectual genes. As a child, he was collected alongside other children for the Umbrella Corporation, and it was here that he received the surname Wesker. As he got older, he would meet the creator of Umbrella, Oswald Spencer, and Spencer saw in Wesker the perfect prodigy and decided to take Wesker under his wing. In 1996, Wesker joined the newly found STARS division of the Raccoon City Police Department, where he would work as a double agent for Umbrella, giving them information on any police investigations. During the same year, Wesker took part in the infamous Mansion incident alongside fellow STARS members Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, and Rebecca Chambers. While at the mansion, Wesker injected himself with an experimental virus that was created by William Burkham and allowed the tyrant creature to kill him, which would cause the virus within his body to reanimate him back to life, giving him enhanced abilities. Over the next 13 years, Wesker would travel around the world collecting the remaining resources of Umbrella while gathering multiple different virus strands and experimental samples in his quest to create the perfect virus strand which would allow him to purge the world to bring a new rise of a new race of superior humans. In 2009, Wesker would succeed in creating the ideal virus strand to purge the world, which he dubbed Ouroboros. However, it was during this time that Wesker would encounter his old STARS member Chris Redfield and his new BSAA partner Sheva Alomar. Chris and Sheva succeeded in stopping Wesker's initial plan to drop Ouroboros into the atmosphere, thereby forcing Wesker to fuse with the Ouroboros virus itself in a last attempt to kill them both. Despite this, thanks to their teamwork and a pair of rocket launchers, Chris and Sheva defeated Wesker, putting his reign of terror to an end once and for all. Jack Krauser was born in 1976 and over the course of his life would show a profound interest in being a soldier. He was an experienced U.S. Army soldier and mercenary and led many successful operations and was an overall first-class soldier who took pride in his capabilities. Krauser's extensive military service and wealth of experience led him to become a Special Force member of the United States SOLCOM unit. In 2002, Krauser received an order to participate in a mission to South America to investigate a link between the Umbrella Corporation and the drug lord Javier Hidalgo. During the mission, Krauser would be partnered with an American government agent named Leon S. Kennedy. Upon reaching their rendezvous point in a local village, Krauser encountered BOWs for the first time. However, he remained fearless and demanded Leon to share everything he knew about them, and it was during this conversation that Krauser would first learn about Albert Wesker. During the mission's conclusion, Krauser would be injured in his left arm and due to his injuries was forced to retire. During his retirement, Krauser began to admire the use of biological weapons, having seen firsthand the power that they wielded and how they exceeded that of any normal human. He developed an ambition to acquire the power of BOWs for himself and in secret, so Krauser faked his own death, and it was shortly after this event that he would first encounter Albert Wesker himself. In 2004, Krauser would be ordered by Wesker to infiltrate the Las Luminadas cult in Europe and recover a sample of the dormant species Las Plagas. In order to gain the trust of the cult's leader Lord Sadler, Krauser kidnapped the president's daughter Ashley Graham. After gaining access to the inner circle of the cult, Krauser took a sample of the Plagas for himself and injected himself, now gaining the superhuman abilities that he had sought so long for. After this, Wesker would send Ada Wong in order to retrieve another sample of Las Plagas, and it was during this time that Krauser would encounter his old partner Leon S. Kennedy. Ordered to kill Leon by both Wesker and Sadler, Krauser would engage Leon in combat but would be defeated. Despite his injuries, Krauser would then decide to go after Ada Wong and would be killed by her shortly after. Following the incident, Krauser's corpse was recovered by Wesker, and the dead Plagas specimen within his body was successfully cloned and aided in the development of Wesker's plans with the Tri-Cell organization. Well, what's up again, folks? Sorry for the long wait, but if you've been keeping track of me over my social outlets, you would know that I've been rather busy these past couple of months. I've traveled overseas to Taiwan, I recently moved into my new house, and I've had a ton of movies and video games to play, and doing all of that alongside a 40-hour full-time job of changing hours makes it very hard to find time to work on these matchups. But now that gaming season for me won't kick back in until early September, now is the perfect time for me to get these versus matchups uploaded as quickly as possible, and we start off by pitting these two super enhanced combatants of the Resident Evil franchise against each other. And just to clear this this up now, I'll be using both of these combatants as they were during the time of their deaths. So it will be Wesker from Resident Evil 5 against Krauser from Resident Evil 4. So with that out of the way, let's start by comparing these two physically. By the time of his death, Wesker was a 50-year-old human male standing 6'3", and despite his age, Wesker was still in insanely good shape, but perhaps entering the tail end of his physical prime. As a result of his viral injection, Wesker was granted a number of superhuman physical enhancements which ranged from hyper-accelerated speed and reflexes, enhanced flexibility, intensified endurance, increased strength, and a limited healing factor. The virus also hardened Wesker's skeleton, internal organs, tissue, and skin to the point that any attempt to punch him or engage him in hand-to-hand combat would most likely result in fractured limbs on a part of the attacker. Despite his virus giving him a series of enhanced physical advantages, by the end of his life it also turned out to be one of his greatest weaknesses. Over the years, the virus became very unstable to the point which led to Wesker having to utilize a special serum to keep his virus at bay at specific intervals, and had to be taken daily. The downside of this serum, however, is that if he takes too much of it or uses his enhanced abilities too often, it could cause his body to break down, killing him in the process. By the time of his death in 2004, Jack Krauser was a 28-year-old human male standing exactly 6 feet tall and was built like a linebacker and was very muscular. Prior to his allegiance to Albert Wesker, Krauser's early military training kept him in extremely good shape for combat. He possessed a great amount of stamina and endurance and was very tolerant to pain. He was very muscular with a solid upper build, and when he infected himself with the Las Plagas sample given to him by Lord Sattler, all of his physical properties were greatly enhanced. Krauser was granted superhuman strength and speed and reflexes, and his enhanced speed and reflexes were so heightened that he was capable of dodging bullets and rockets like they were nothing. He could also jump exceptionally long distances, and his physical durability was beyond so much of even superhuman capable opponents. This guy could take so much damage that he could take a magnum to the face and keep going as if not affected at all. The Las Plagas injected into his body also granted Krauser the ability to physically mutate his left arm, granting him a gigantic blade arm that was not only capable of being used for cleaving opponents into pieces, but could also be used as a metallic shield which could protect him from all projectiles from the knees up like a riot shield. He could also use this blade to execute a powerful forward charging thrust that could literally rip people apart to the point where their bodies would look like they were exploding. In all, Krauser is one opponent you do not run into unprepared. When it comes to the physicality of both Wesker and Krauser, they pretty much match each other point for point. Both have enhanced strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, endurance, and durability. So what really determines the edge in this category are the extra properties that the experimental virus for Wesker and the Plagas sample for Krauser will grant them. And unfortunately for Wesker, he is at a slight disadvantage here. Wesker's hardened body and low-level healing factor will allow him to stay in the fight longer in a practical sense, but the virus within his body is very unstable, requiring Wesker to take a serum on a regular basis to keep him in line. It is my belief that the more Wesker is forced to rely on his enhanced abilities that the virus granted him during a battle, the faster the virus within his body will begin to become more unstable, and this very much makes sense when you look at Wesker's lifestyle. Despite his combative history, Wesker spent very little time taking part in actual combat scenarios and acted as more of a manipulator, allowing others to do the work for him. Because of this, Wesker rarely ever needed to use his enhanced abilities, which allowed the virus within his body to stay very stable for long periods of time. As for Krauser, he may not have Wesker's hardened body or its healing factor. The Plagas sample within his body was tested and is far more stable and easier to control. The properties of Krauser's blade arm alone grant him an offensive and defensive tool that he can use whenever he needs it, and I do believe that though conventional weapons like knives and bullets from guns would have a very hard time causing any significant damage to Wesker due to his hardened body, Krauser's blade arm would have no such trouble, and despite its size, Krauser has proven that he can move this weapon relatively fast, and it is for these reasons that I give Jack Krauser the edge in physical capabilities and special abilities. When it comes to weapons for Wesker, there's really not much to say. By the time of his death, Wesker carried a pair of L-Hawk Magnums, which in their default settings could cause some pretty serious damage to anything that it hit, but only carried about 5 rounds per magazine. Krauser, on the other hand, was much more loaded and would be bringing 4 weapons to this contest. His primary long-range weapon was his own personal customized compound bow with an effective killing range of about 60 yards, and was fitted with both standard arrows as well as arrows that carried a small explosive charge. For medium range, he carried a standard TMP, which was a fully automatic submachine gun which had a firing speed of 0.10 seconds and carried a magazine clip of 30 rounds, in which Krauser could easily carry a few of these extra clips in reserve. His primary weapon for close range engagement was his own personalized, customized, and designed hunter's knife, which was measured at about 18 inches, with the blade itself measuring at about 12 inches of sharpened steel. Krauser also carried 4 flash grenades, which were mostly used to cover his retreats at close ranges. I think it's pretty obvious who has the edge here. Wesker may be carrying a pair of magnums, which on their own could cause some pretty concentrated damage if Wesker was able to hit Krauser, but Krauser is carrying a large collection of weapons that give him more quality and variety with his combative options. This time it is indeed quantity over quality. Jack Krauser gets the edge in weapons. As a martial combatant, Krauser was shown to have true talent as a soldier, which allowed him to progress through his years of constant training and constant missions as a mercenary with incredible results over just a few years. His extensive training and on-the-field experience allowed Krauser to be very flexible and have a wide variety of skills with firearms and heavy ordnance. Krauser was also an exceptional archer, preferring to use his own personal customized bow as his main weapon. Unlike Leon S. Kennedy, however, who mainly relied on quick thinking and acrobatic maneuvers, Krauser's style of up-close combat was more based off of him taking advantage of his overwhelming strength and using sheer brute force to take down his opponents as quickly as possible, or if given the opportunity could easily rely on stealth tactics to catch his opponents off guard. Thanks to his training with SOCOM, though Krauser could be seen as a simple brute, he was actually very clever with his tactical approaches and was capable of foreplanning that relied on stealth maneuvers, surprise attacks, and non-direct approaches to wear down his opponents. Then once he had successfully worn down his opponents, he would then pounce on them with overwhelming force. Though like so many other antagonists in the Resident Evil franchise, Krauser could be overconfident and this could result in sloppy execution of his maneuvers, and Krauser did have a tendency to repeat his attacks, which would make him very predictable at times and leave him open to retaliations. Before injecting himself with the prototype virus that was given to him by William Birkin, Wesker was a master martial artist with a cold-blooded attitude to never show even an ounce of fear in combat, and was even capable of fighting off a horde of BOW creatures by himself. During his time with STARS, he spent a great deal of time training his skills as a marksman, but chose not to hone them as much as his fellow STARS members. After his death, Wesker, now granted with a collection of enhanced physical capabilities, made him even more dangerous as an up-close physical combatant, allowing him to perform powerful kicks, punches, and even grapples. However, due to his lifestyle, he never really found many opportunities to use these maneuvers in combat. One of his favorite techniques was his ability to impale people with his hand. However, this technique did take time to charge up and could easily telegraph what Wesker was going to do. As a battle tactician, despite his cocky attitude, he was nothing less than a genius in the right scenario. Against certain opponents, Wesker was very skilled at watching his opponent's maneuvers, techniques, and combat patterns, then being able to develop a counter-offensive that could perfectly respond to his opponent. He was also very capable at being able to completely change his offensive approach in combat if his typical maneuvers failed to deliver results. Wesker was also very skilled at getting into his opponent's heads using psychological warfare by spouting out insults and threats in order to throw his opponents off their game, or to play off an opponent's temper, allowing Wesker to exploit a weakness in his opponent's offense. However, this obviously would prove to be less effective against individuals who are used to these techniques. His greatest weakness as a tactician and overall combatant was his overconfidence and cocky attitude. Wesker has had a history of underestimating his opponents, simply toying with them until they were able to develop an effective counter-maneuver to knock Wesker back on his back foot, and it was this very element that would lead to his own death. This department is by far the most critical to call, but when it comes to comparing Krauser's true talent and martial skills against Wesker's intellectual tactical mind, it is a clear contest between mind versus muscle. As straightforward combatants, there is no question that Krauser is the overall better fighter. He has the training, experience, equipment, and mindset to present a very serious threat to Wesker. Despite Wesker clearly being older and having much more time to develop his fighting skills in combination with his enhanced abilities, there is just no topping pure combative talent. Krauser was born to be a soldier, while Wesker's lifestyle meant that he would have very little opportunity to really even test out his abilities in the field. But Wesker is not completely outmatched in this contest, as his own skill set and limited combat experience alongside his enhanced physical capabilities will allow him to stay in the fight for a good period of time, perhaps even long enough for Wesker to change the pace of the engagement. But there is always the threat that Krauser could finish off Wesker before this happens. However, Krauser may have spent more time on the battlefield than Wesker. One has to remember that with Wesker being much older than Krauser, even before he was granted his enhancements by the very experimental virus that William Burkham gave him when he was not out on the battlefield, he was developing his intelligence, allowing him a greater ability to adapt. A great example of a combatant's ability to adapt to a superior fighter can be seen in the final battle between Captain America and Iron Man in the film Captain America Civil War. During that engagement, it is established that Iron Man cannot win a straight-up fight against Captain America, but with his suit's ability to take Captain America's blows and his onboard computer's ability to analyze Captain America's fight patterns, Iron Man was quickly able to execute a counter-offense that allowed him to take the upper hand, and this is something that Wesker could absolutely pull off. Once Krauser has been forced to change up his primary approach to combat, and he will, Wesker will be much more prepared and even able to lock onto specific weaknesses of Krauser's new offensive approach and will gradually wear Krauser down. His final fight against Leon S. Kennedy was a prime example of how much trouble Krauser can get into when he's facing an opponent who can adapt and prepare themselves for this method. At the end of the day, however effective Krauser can be in a practical sense in the short term, he simply cannot keep up with Wesker's ability to adapt on the fly while keeping himself in the fight for the long haul, and it is for these reasons that I give Wesker the edge in martial skills and battle tactics. A fight between these two superhumans would certainly be an interesting fight to witness, but when the dust finally clears, there is no question that Wesker would be standing victorious. Now, this is one of those very rare matchups where a combatant gets a majority of the advantage in the individual categories, but comes up short once they are all applied at once. Despite Krauser clearly having a much more stable physical body, a better collection of weapons at his disposal, and even being the overall better fighter in terms of raw combative talent, this all counts for nothing when you have an opponent who has the physical capabilities and knowledge to neutralize all of these advantages. Now let's set up this fight. Let's say this takes place after the events of Resident Evil 4, but just right before the events of Resident Evil 5. Instead of being killed by Ada Wong, Krauser was able to successfully escape the island after being defeated by Leon, but due to his failure decides to not return to Wesker and goes into hiding. With Ada Wong having taken the primary sample of the Plagas and now disappeared, Wesker needs a new sample, and after years of searching he has managed to track Krauser down to an open field in Europe. Wesker demands for the Plaga sample within Krauser's body, but Krauser refuses to give it up, and their fight begins. The two would circle each other, neither one underestimating the other, as Krauser has heard rumors of what Wesker is capable of, and Wesker has seen firsthand what Krauser is capable of, having watched Krauser's fight against Leon from his satellite years ago. Krauser pulls out his bow and arrows and fires a series of arrows at Wesker, but he easily evades all of them, including the explosive arrows, with little to no effort, and keeps his distance. Krauser then pulls out his TMP and fires the entire clip at Wesker, but again, Wesker is able to easily evade all of Krauser's bullets. At this point, Krauser then throws away his TMP and states to Wesker that he needed to drop the dead weight because he wasn't going to need him for this fight. Krauser then pulls out his knife, and Wesker knows that the real engagement is about to begin. The two engage each other in hand-to-hand combat, and right from the start, Krauser is getting the better of Wesker. Krauser has a more seasoned skill set, and when combined with the use of his knife, it is proving to show some serious results, as Krauser is able to deliver successful kicks, punches, and slashes to Wesker with his knife. Wesker tries to perform some of his special attacks, but with their equal levels of speed, but Krauser's superior advantage in strength, it makes it impossible for Wesker to pull them off. Despite taking damage, however, Wesker's hardened body and healing factor are keeping him in the fight, and at some point Wesker is successful at disarming Krauser of his knife, and has now gotten used to Krauser's fighting form and techniques, and he is able to initiate an effective counter-offense that is successful and forces Krauser back. With his knife gone, and Wesker having successfully adapted to his fighting techniques, Krauser throws all of his flash grenades at Wesker, allowing him to jump a good distance back, and he begins mutating his arm in preparation for a new offense. When Wesker's sight returns, he can see that Krauser has successfully mutated his arm and is prepared to re-engage. As Krauser attacks Wesker, he is making sure to avoid any and all attacks that are coming from Krauser's blade arm, as it is more than likely capable of doing some serious damage to Wesker even with his hardened body and healing factor. Needing to end the fight quickly, Wesker begins to hide his left hand and begins to charge it. Seeing this, Krauser immediately covers his body with his blade arm and begins to walk slowly towards Wesker, preparing for Wesker's attack. And that is when Wesker sees the opening that he's been looking for, and giving off one of his infamous one-liners, Wesker says, "I'm not aiming at your body." Wesker quickly pulls out his L-Hawk Magnum and quick fires at Krauser's exposed right leg, and as Krauser drops to one knee, Wesker then charges right at Krauser and drives his hand right through Krauser's head, killing him instantly. Wesker then picks up Krauser's deceased body and takes it back to his headquarters, and now being able to use the Plaga sample within Krauser's body, is able to further strengthen the Ouroboros virus. And thus I declare Albert Wesker the winner. And that will do it for this matchup. Do you agree that Wesker is simply too smart and adaptable for Krauser to take down? Or do you believe that Krauser's offense could successfully pin Wesker down long enough to give him the victory? Share your thoughts with me and everyone else in the comments down below, and please remember to be respectful of other people's opinions. And like always, if you like this matchup, please feel free to like and subscribe to keep track of me and my future matchups and other videos. So thank you guys for watching, and like always, now here's a preview of my next Versus Series matchup. And personally, this one is going to be tough, as I will be venturing into uncharted territories and opening the floodgates to an entirely new group of characters. But I will do my best. See ya.